Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're looking at, well, a concept that is kind of the absolute bedrock of protecting your business. And to start, I want you to picture what happens when a local business owner closes up shop for the night.
Right. There's a whole routine to it.
Exactly. It's a very specific ritual. You lock the register, you set the alarm, and then you physically turn the deadbolt on the front door.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely tangible. You can feel that metal key right in your hand, and you know exactly who else holds a copy. It's maybe the store manager, the assistant manager, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. The physical control is very obvious.
But then you look at a company's digital footprint, and suddenly that physical keychain turns into this, I don't know, this giant invisible bowl of keys just sitting right by the front door.
Oh, that is a perfect way to put it.
Right, because people are just walking by, they're grabbing these keys, keeping them in their pockets forever, and honestly, nobody is actually keeping track.
And that invisible bowl of keys, that blind spot, is precisely where most organizations completely lose control of their security.
Yeah.
Because, we like to think of our digital borders as these impenetrable fortresses, right, guarded by all this cutting-edge technology. But the reality is, it's much more mundane.
We're basically leaving the gates wide open.
Exactly. We're leaving them open because we've handed out way too many keys. We forgot who has them, and this is the big one. We never bother to ask for them back when people actually leave the company.
Which is crazy when you think about it. And that bowl of keys is exactly what we're pulling apart today. So we are looking at the official documentation for CIS Control 5.
Which is entirely focused on account management.
Right. And we're pairing that with a really practical, real-world analysis from a CyberOps source deep dive. So our mission here is to unpack why managing who has access to your business systems isn't just like some boring IT cleanup chore.
No, not at all.
It's the foundational step of business protection. Because, if you don't know who has the keys to the digital building, you cannot honestly say you're protecting the business.
You really can't. The underlying logic here is just undeniable. You can invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in, next generation firewalls, heuristic antivirus software.
Intrusion detection systems, all of it.
All of it. But if the front door is being unlocked with a valid authorized key, none of that technology is going to stop someone from just walking right in.
Because the system just thinks it's a normal Tuesday.
Right. The security tools see a valid login and simply assume, well, this person belongs here. They have the key.
Which brings me to something I think we really need to clarify for you listening, because there's this massive disconnect between the public perception of cyber attacks and the actual mechanics of a breach.
Oh, the hacking myth.
Yeah, the hacking myth. Because when you read the news, the narrative is almost always framed around, like, high-tech espionage.
It always sounds like a movie.
Right. It's always, hackers breached the mainframe using a complex zero-day exploit to bypass the firewall. But practically speaking, don't most attackers aren't they generally not burning expensive zero-day exploits on small to medium-sized businesses?
No, absolutely not. They are taking the path of least resistance.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, writing a custom exploit or trying to actively break an encryption protocol that takes immense time, skill, resources. Threat actors, they operate like a business.
Right, ROI, return on investment.
Exactly. They want maximum return on minimal investment. They don't want to spend weeks trying to break the door down with a digital battering ram when they can simply, buy a stolen key for a few dollars online and just turn the knob.
Just walk right in.
Yeah, the sources are definitive on this. The vast majority of initial compromises happen through valid credential abuse. It's just unlocked doors.
So let's talk about the mechanics of that, because credential stuffing isn't hacking in that traditional cinematic sense. It's essentially just brute force automation, right?
That's exactly what it is.
So attackers basically take a database of passwords that were stolen from some random unrelated breach, like, say, a massive dump from a compromised shoe shopping website from 3 years ago.
Right, something totally disconnected from your business.
Right, and then they write a script to automatically throw those millions of credentials at the login API endpoints of business platforms.
Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, yeah.
And they aren't even really guessing. They're betting on human psychology. They know people reuse their personal passwords for their work accounts.
Yes, the psychology is the real vulnerability there. They use automated botnets to test these credentials at just an incredible scale. And they spread the login attempts across thousands of IP addresses to avoid triggering basic rate-limiting defenses.
So the system doesn't lock them out for guessing too many times.
Exactly. So if an employee used, say, summer 2024 for their shoe store account, and then they use that same password for their corporate email. The attacker slide right past the perimeter.
That psychological tendency to reuse passwords basically transforms a breach at a completely unrelated, low-security website into a catastrophic breach at your company.
And that highlights exactly why the sources emphasize establishing a baseline inventory of accounts before doing anything else, because you have to know what doors actually exist before you can check the locks.
You can't protect what you can't see.
Right. And the CIS framework outlines this as the very first safeguard, Safeguard 5.1. You have to establish and maintain a comprehensive inventory of all accounts, user, administrator, service accounts.
And it can't just be elusive usernames.
No, it needs context. It has to have the person's actual name, their department, and their start and stop dates.
Because context is everything. Without it, you end up with what the sources describe as these unlocked doors. These are the real-world artifacts of poor identity management.
Like what, specifically?
Well, we're talking about an old test account that an IT contractor created, say, 3 years ago during a server migration, and they just forgot to delete it.
Yeah.
Or, we're talking about the shared marketingatcompany.com login.
The classic shared login.
Right, the one that was created just to save money on a software license. So now 5 different people know the password, but nobody actually owns the security of that account.
Those shared accounts are an absolute nightmare for accountability. If something goes wrong, who did it? You have no idea.
Exactly.
But the most dangerous unlocked door, at least from what I'm reading here, seems to be the former employee.
Oh, without a doubt.
It is staggering how often a disgruntled or, even just a negligent former employee retains active access to a company's CRM or their email system simply because the account was never actually disabled after the exit interview.
It happens all the time. There's this huge organizational disconnect between HR and IT, and it's a massive vulnerability.
How does that usually play out?
Well, HR processes the termination, right? They do the paperwork.
Yeah.
But the actual ticket never gets to the systems administrator to actually cut the digital access.
Yeah, they still have the keys.
They still have the keys weeks, sometimes months later. That is why the CyberOps source analysis is so adamant about recurring reviews. You cannot just build this inventory once, declare victory, and put it in a drawer.
Right, because the environment is constantly shifting.
Exactly. People are promoted, roles change, vendors cycle in and out. If you aren't validating that list of active accounts at least quarterly, your digital footprint is basically expanding in the dark.
Okay, so having an accurate inventory is the baseline, but that naturally introduces a new problem, right? Because if you know exactly who holds the 500 keys to your business, how do you mathematically ensure those 500 people aren't immediately getting their pockets picked by the credential stuffing scripts we just talked about?
Right, the password issue.
Yeah, this is where the CIS guidelines get highly specific. Safeguard 5.2. If an account is secured with multi-factor authentication MFA, the password needs to be at least 8 characters.
Right.
But if MFA isn't an option, that minimum jumps up to 14 characters. Why the big jump?
So the difference in those requirements really comes down to computational math and cryptographic hashing.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So when you store a password, the system doesn't actually save the plain text. Right. It saves a mathematical representation called a hash.
It's like a scrambled version of the password.
Exactly. So if an attacker breaches the database and steals those hashes, they use powerful graphics cards to run what are called rainbow tables.
Rainbow tables.
Yeah, they're basically these massive pre-computed lists of every possible password hash. And they use them to crack the stolen hashes offline.
Oh, wow. So they aren't even interacting with your login page anymore.
Nope, they're doing it on their own hardware. And a shorter password, say 8 characters of that MFA, that can be cracked in seconds.
Seconds.
Literally seconds. But a 14-character password exponentially increases the entropy.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning the computational power and the time required to guess that combination becomes functionally impossible for your standard attacker. It would take them centuries.
So the 14 characters act as this mathematical wall when you don't have the secondary safety net of an MFA prompt on your phone to stop the login.
Precisely. It's a structural barrier.
Okay, so if we synthesize the underlying logic of this first half of the deep dive, I think the best plain English line to sum up this whole mindset comes straight out of the CyberOps source perspective.
What's the line?
Every account should have a person, a purpose, and a review date.
Yes, that is it.
If an account is missing any of those 3 variables, it's a structural liability.
That really is the golden rule of identity management. A person, a purpose, and a review date.
Yeah.
If an account exists outside of that framework, you have to assume it is an unmonitored attack vector.
Right. So tracking everyday users is logical enough, but as we dig deeper into these CIS controls, moving into safeguards 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, the focus shifts to these specialized accounts.
The ones people forget about.
Exactly. What I like to think of as the hidden keys and the master keys. Let's start with the hidden ones, the dormant accounts.
Ah, yeah.
These are the quiet backdoors. The specific CIS rule here dictates that any account showing 45 days of inactivity must be disabled or deleted.
And that 45-day window is a very intentional metric.
Why 45 days?
Well, it's long enough to account for an employee taking an extended vacation, right? Or maybe a short medical leave. But it's short enough to catch an intern who left at the end of the summer. Or an external contractor whose project wrapped up but their access was never formally revoked.
Right. They finished the job, but the key is still working.
Exactly. And a dormant account is incredibly dangerous, specifically because nobody is monitoring it.
Because there's no human attached to it anymore to complain if things get weird.
Right. Think about it. If an attacker compromises an active employee's account, that employee might notice strange emails in their sent folder. Or they get bumped out of a session and they'll raise an alarm.
They'll call IT.
Exactly. But if an attacker compromises a dormant account, they can operate silently inside the network for months and literally no one will notice.
That silence is the real threat. Okay, so that's the hidden keys. But let's look at the other extreme. The master keys. The administrator accounts.
This is a huge one.
So put yourself in the shoes of a small business owner, right? Or maybe a lead IT director listening to this.
Okay.
If I'm the boss and I know I'm careful online, why can't I just use my admin account for my daily work? I mean, the friction of logging out of my standard account, logging into a completely separate privileged account just to change like one firewall setting.
And then logging out again?
Yeah, it feels incredibly inefficient. Why is that separation so critical?
Because it comes down to the concept of the blast radius and how operating systems handle inheritance.
Okay, inheriting.
Right. The administrator account has the power to change system configurations, disable endpoint detection tools, create new hidden users, access encrypted databases. It can do anything.
It's God-level access.
Exactly. So when you log into your machine with that admin account to do your daily tasks, like browsing the web, clicking random links, or opening PDF attachments in your email, you are exposing that God-level access to everyday internet risks.
And the mechanism there is that whatever program I run, it automatically inherits the permissions of the account I'm currently logged into.
Precisely. So let's say you open a malicious phishing attachment while logged in as a standard user. The malware attempts to execute, right? But the operating system blocks it.
Because standard users can't install software.
Exactly. The standard user doesn't have the authority to alter the registry, so the threat is contained. The blast radius is tiny.
But if I do it as an admin...
If you click that exact same attachment while operating under an administrator context, the malware inherits your privileges. It silently bypasses the internal controls, installs itself, and gives the attacker total dominance over the network before you've even closed the email.
Wow. And that's the lateral movement piece we always see in those post-breach reports.
Yet the attackers don't even need to hack the system at that point. They just, as they say, live off the land. They use the administrative tools you inadvertently unlocked for them.
That makes total sense. It creates a necessary physical barrier. You use your normal, non-privileged account for the high-risk activity of browsing the internet, and you only invoke the master key when you are specifically doing administrative work.
Right. It isolates the risk.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't wear your hazardous material suit to the cafeteria for lunch.
Right. Yeah.
So you shouldn't use your domain admin account to check your inbox.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so that covers the human elements. We've got the active users, the dormant users, the admins. But the source material highlights another category that I feel like often gets completely ignored.
Service accounts.
Yes, service accounts. These are the ghosts in the machine. And the architecture of how these work is really fascinating because it's essentially applications authenticating with other applications.
Yes, service accounts are arguably the most vulnerable point in modern network architecture right now.
Why is that?
Well, think of a service account as an automated identity. So if your company's CRM system needs to pull data from your payroll database every night at 3:00 a.m., a human being isn't waking up to type in a password, right?
Obviously not.
The CRM uses a service account. It often relies on API keys or hard-coded credentials to verify its identity and access the database autonomously.
And the underlying problem is that because they run silently in the background, they don't complain when they get locked out. They aren't tied to a human who will open an IT ticket.
Exactly. So they just become part of the background infrastructure. They become structural tech debt.
Tech debt, how so?
What frequently happens is, say, a developer writes a custom script for a really critical business function. They assign a service account to run it, and they give that account massive sweeping permissions just to make absolutely sure the script doesn't fail.
Because they just want it to work.
Right? Then that developer leaves the company. 5 years later, the script is still running every night. No one in the current IT department knows exactly what the script does, where the credentials are saved, or what might happen if they change the password.
It's that classic IT psychology of don't touch it, it's working.
Yes. The fear of breaking a critical business process literally paralyzes the IT team. So you end up with a service account possessing domain-level access, using a password that hasn't been rotated in a decade, just sitting quietly on a server.
And attackers must know this.
Oh, they actively hunt for these accounts, because once they compromise a service account, it provides persistent, highly privileged access that blends perfectly into normal automated network traffic.
Nobody notices the ghost.
Right. The CIS framework demands that these ghosts be pulled out of the shadows. They have to be inventoried with a documented owner, a clear technical purpose, and a strict review date.
Okay, so when you lay it all out like that, tracking active users, auditing dormant accounts, enforcing 14-character passwords, separating administrative privileges, and mapping this entire web of invisible service accounts.
It's a lot.
It sounds incredibly daunting. If you're a listener running a 25-person small business, or even a mid-sized firm without a dedicated compliance team, this feels like an impossible enterprise-grade undertaking.
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but I think the CyberOps source analysis frames this perfectly for the small business reality.
How so?
The goal isn't achieving immediate perfection. You don't have to fix it all tomorrow. The goal is establishing process and visibility. The ultimate architectural solution, which is outlined in the later CIS safeguards, is to centralize account management.
Right. Safeguard 5.6. This is where we get into directory services like Microsoft Entra ID or Google Workspace.
Exactly.
And rather than thinking of these as complex enterprise tools, I like to think of a directory service as a centralized bouncer with an earpiece.
I like that.
Right. Instead of having 20 different bouncers at 20 different doors, checking 20 different clipboards, a directory service handles the authentication at one central point.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The underlying mechanism there is token-based authentication, like SAML or OAuth.
So how does the bouncer work in that setup?
Well, when an employee logs into the directory service, the bouncer verifies their identity once, and then it issues them a digital token.
Like a wristband.
Exactly like a VIP wristband. The employee hands that token to the CRM, the payroll system, the cloud storage app, and that's how they get inside.
And the true beauty of that centralized architecture is what happens when someone leaves the company. You don't have to scramble to log into 20 different administration panels to manually delete their accounts one by one.
No, you just tell the central balancer to revoke their access.
And instantly, every token they hold becomes invalid. Every door is locked simultaneously.
That centralized revocation is the absolute gold standard for identity management. But, getting to that point is an iterative journey. The practical starting point for a small business isn't deploying a complex zero-trust architecture on day one.
What is the starting point then?
The starting point is opening a blank spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet? Really?
Really, it just comes down to listing the core systems, email, CRM, cloud storage, the website backend, the vendor portals, and forcing the uncomfortable conversation between departments.
HR, operations, and IT actually talking to each other.
Yes. They have to sit down, look at the spreadsheet, and ask who currently has access to this data.
That exercise alone must be illuminating.
Oh, it forces the business to confront the reality of their digital footprint. You immediately discover, like the former sales director who still has access to the client database.
Or the external marketing consultant whose admin account is still active 2 years after their contract ended.
Exactly. You find the bowl of keys.
And that ties perfectly into the philosophy behind CyberOps source cybersecurity assessments. Because a genuine assessment isn't just a technical audit where someone runs a port scanner against your firewall and hands you a dense, unreadable PDF.
No, not a real assessment.
It is fundamentally a gap analysis of your business risk. It helps the leadership team answer those incredibly practical questions.
Right. Questions like, do we know every active account? Are former employees mathematically locked out?
Are our admin accounts physically separated from daily use?
That
Are we documenting the automated service accounts?
Are we enforcing unique passwords to defeat credential stuffing?
Are we disabling dormant accounts? And most importantly, are we reviewing all of this on a quarterly basis?
And those are not technical questions. They are governance questions. Answering them moves a business from operating on assumptions to operating on verified reality.
It really brings us full circle to the core premise of this entire deep dive. Account management is not a help desk ticket. It is the fundamental control mechanism of your organization.
Yep.
You cannot protect systems you cannot see, and you cannot control access that you aren't actively reviewing. The locks on the doors are completely meaningless if you don't know who is carrying the keys.
And as we wrap up this analysis, there is a specific scenario from the source material that I think is really worth mulling over for everyone listening.
What's that?
Think about the last time an employee left your organization under less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
Or the last time a major vendor contract was terminated.
Okay.
How long did their digital footprint remain fully active in your environment? Was it hours? Was it weeks? Is it potentially still active right now?
That's a chilling thought.
Because threat actors thrive in those unmonitored spaces. They love the accounts you forget to check.
That invisible bowl of keys sitting by the front door is always growing if you aren't paying attention. I want to leave you with one simple thought today. I should probably check who still has access to our systems.